you talked about asking for help, you recognised the need to be listened to. You know, probably from feeling pain that you'd seen others go through an experience where they never spoke, where they never talked about their challenges, where they never shared their emotions because it wasn't the thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, something that really shone out of your story was how you reflect on those moments of darkness and you've used them as a lesson. You've
Mm-hmm.
used them as the opportunity to find the gift amongst all of that, and then take that and apply it in a way that moves towards a more positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what was it in those moments that allowed you to look at things in that way? And I'm sure it wasn't always that clear, right? When we look back on things, it seems much easier to join the dots. But
Yeah.
how did you manage in those moments to take the small steps? Because there's a lot of people at the moment who are no doubt facing mental health challenges, whether it's anxiety, depression. And, you know, mental health speaks to my heart, Richie, because I come from a family that have suffered from mental health challenges. You know, it's one of the reasons why I'm on this mission and purpose as well. But what was it in those moments that gave you hope, that helped you to move forward and take those smaller steps?
I find we all have this deeper ability to be an incredibly resilient human being. We just get a little bit lost. And that can be a factor of a few different things, whether it's your environment, the people around you, your upbringing, you know, the things that you read, the things that you listen to, the things that you watch. And it can start to dampen down our true fire, our real driving force, and our true purpose. We're all here, I feel, to offer something, to bring something of purpose to our own lives, to the lives of others. And it was the deeper feeling when I'd find space, when I was out in the ocean, when I was sat on my surfboard, when I was in a meditation trying to cross my legs in one of my first yoga classes. And it'd be this moment of clarity or this little bit of a gut feeling, and it would come to me. Sometimes it's like a little wandering daydream, because I'd given myself a bit of space, a bit of time to slow things down, to get that feeling, to connect with that feeling again, and to get these little moments of clarity or a little vision would come in. And sometimes in conversation with people, somebody you'll meet that will inspire you, like a conversation like this, and it will trigger something that you've maybe neglected or forgotten about. And it will just reconnect you with that thought or that emotion or that feeling. And that would then steer me on a path, because I wouldn't ignore it. I'd act. I'd either write it down, or I'd talk about it in a social media post because it really triggered me, or I'd sit with it a little bit more and maybe have a conversation with someone else and unpack it a little bit more. But I would never ignore that calling. I would never ignore that opportunity to do the work, whatever that work might be, no matter how little it was. And that allowed me to then feel more comfortable stepping into uncomfortable silences, which before I try and fill with some chat and I'd waffle away or I'd distract myself. And it became really important then to just keep leaning in and to not be afraid of the confrontation or whatever might come up, even though it might be a bit uncomfortable, to then make that bit of more effort and be more enthusiastic to put the work in and see what came up and not be afraid to confront it. And that for me was a form of resilience when I could have just given up and very easily got distracted again, because we're constantly being distracted, right? Our attention span is so short. We're so easily distracted. We're consuming information. It can be overwhelming. Mental health, I find now, is under so much pressure because we're over consuming and we're not able to connect with the information, which is just passing through us and bouncing off us. And we're comparing our lives to other people's, and we're losing our way, and we're being pressured to do this. This wasn't quite what we wanted to do, but we feel a bit stuck. And we don't give ourselves the space to kind of connect with what we really should be doing, and that it's not actually that hard just to steer your attention or just to start something that is your true core and that does lift your energy, that does make you happy. And then you can find a balance between all of it to eventually steering yourself down that to being your full purpose. And I find sometimes people look at the big scale and the spectrum, all the things you've got to figure out, all the things you want to achieve in your life before you can call it complete. And then nothing ever happens because that's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that can be a mental health battle in itself because you're thinking about your past, your other failures, the things that you didn't overcome, the things that cause you a bit of pain, or just the pure challenge of what that obstacle actually is. So you never start, or you give up before you've even got past that next chapter. So for me, I look at all these things, I think, right, we've talked about this before. What's the thing that I feel is the obstacle that if I tackle it, it's really going to allow me to make that next step? And then the next step is going to make sense because I've already overcome this chapter. So that might be a bit of a roundabout way to answer that question, but I feel that's important to mention, or at least give people the opportunity to step back and change the perspective a little bit, because there's always something you can do. You just have to sometimes give yourself a little bit of the space and the silence or the change of environment to maybe recognize that you've gone off track or there's something you could be doing better. And there's always something we can do to get ourselves back. There's always an option. And that's kind of like the internal dialogue that I go through every time I'm faced with these challenges before I make that next step. So I'm hoping that if people listening to this would see that as an opportunity to go, do you know, wherever I am, there has been some things that I've had this feeling of that needs to change or I'm not happy with. There's a few things I've been wanting to work on, but I've been putting it off. Do the work. Because there's something we can be doing today that will allow us to tap into that emotion, that feeling, that vibe that can spark something in us to put in the work again tomorrow. And then see where you go with that, because the ride is worth it, even if it's a bit like that.
I've never seen one that's not like that.